Howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. The gems have arrived, and therefore so has all of the initial theory crafting of how we want to build characters in 3.7 Legion. This is intended to be a guide to a champion. The champion has been overhauled considerably during 3.7, or at least not really considerably. It's only a minor change, but the change is actually important. The change that was made was a transformation of the Master of Metal node here to be a powerful new Impale node. Now, Impale was one of those mechanics that was added to the game and generally wasn't received all that well when it was added. I think it was in 3.6, it may have even been 3.5. It wasn't regarded well enough to really be added to the game with a lot of fanfare. Not many players used it, and many players don't even realize it exists. What it does, it's a way of scaling pure physical damage. When you hit an enemy, if you impale them, and Master of Metal gives you 20% chance to impale enemies on hit with attacks, and this character will have a 100% chance. You deal your normal damage, but you also leave a lingering reminder of the damage that you dealt to that monster by impaling them, which basically causes them to take more damage the next times they take hits. If you hit an enemy for 10,000 damage while you impale it, you deal your 10,000 damage immediately, and then the next 5 times you hit that monster, you deal an extra 1,000 damage. Ultimately, it's like a slow motion 50% more multiplier. 5 additional hits of 10% more damage. However, with the Master of Metal node, you don't just get 5 hits, you get 7. Impales you inflict last 2 additional hits. This is considerable. Suddenly, you're not just dealing 50% more damage, you're dealing 70% more damage. That's a lot. That is a hell of a lot. What we're going to do is build a character around using melee skills, and in this I'm going to use Heavy Strike as an example, but feel free to change that. You can use the core of this build with a different skill, and we're going to maximize the potential chance to impale enemies. We want to get that to 100%. Additionally to that, we want to have the character do more damage with the impales. Our key strategy for doing this is going to revolve around the Impale Support gem. So, as much as the Toucan is great, I'm going to retire him for a little bit and bring up Impale Support. Impale Support has several effects. Firstly, 40% chance to impale enemies on hit. This stacks with other sources, and we have 40% on the tree, 20% in the Ascendancy, and this 40% makes up a total of 100. I will just add in that you have the flexibility at high gear level. You can unspec some of the nodes from the tree, and you can use Jun, the Veiled Master. Some of her crafts can allow you to craft as much as 20% chance to impale on a weapon, and this comes in conjunction with also getting a considerable amount of increased physical damage on those crafts. These do clash with some other crafts, and so it's not something that you necessarily will want to use on every build, but it's a powerful option, and it's also pretty good on the budget. It only costs 8 Chaos Orbs to craft the highest tier and 3 Chaos Orbs to craft the second highest. In any case, we're going to start out by taking all of the Impale nodes that are available on the passive tree, and reconsider this later. Now, our primary attack is going to be the newly buffed Heavy Strike. Heavy Strike does ridiculous amounts of damage. It's also well placed to stun enemies with the sheer amount of physical damage that it does. It has a pretty small range. I can't showcase it at the moment because, like all the melee skills, it's getting changed. So anything that I showed you in the game client from the 3.6 expansion may not be what you actually experience in the game in the aftermath of 3.7. In fact, all of the melee attacks are being transformed so that they do. There's Heavy Strike. That all of the melee attacks are being transformed in how they work in game, so that they hit multiple targets. Anyways, here's what Heavy Strike looks like when you've got level 20 gem and 20 quality on it. Notice it knocks enemies back on hit, which actually is annoying, generally speaking. but a number of bosses are immune. 222% of base damage, but only 85% of base attack speed. So you really are doing a heavy strike. You're winding that up, you're smacking the enemy, and you're smacking it hard. 25% reduced enemy stun threshold and 20% increased stun duration on enemies means that if you can scale that physical damage well, you're going to do a lot. You're going to do a lot of stuns. 20% increased damage is nice. That I believe comes from the quality. 20% chance to deal double damage. Oh my god, when you deal double damage, this is going to hurt. And plus 4 to melee range means that you're hitting a larger area of the screen. So that's heavy strike for you. What we're going to do is we're going to scale up the physical damage on that. Firstly, we're going to link it to Impale Support. As we're already mentioning, this is fundamentally an Impale character. So this will give us 40% chance to impale enemies on hit, so we're up to 60 plus 40 more on passive nodes. 59% increased impale effect. This means that instead of dealing 10% damage on each of the extra 7 hits, we're dealing 15.9% damage. Now, my math says that 15.9 times 7 is 111.3% increased, more damage. So that's a staggering amount of extra damage that we're getting for each time we inflict an impale. And we're going to be inflicting impales all the time. And we're dealing 15% more physical damage, which then ramps up the impales as well. So this is a no-brainer support. We are absolutely using Impale Support, and it will be great. We're then going to use any 2 to 4, depending upon your luck, with sourcing a 6-link item. And I do have a guide as to how to acquire a 6-link item at the beginning of the league. But depending on your luck, you may not be able to use all of these gems. So just pick 2 to 4, depending upon your equipment, of Brutality support, Ruthless support, Multistrike support, melee physical damage support, and Bloodlust support. Bloodlust is one that I'm going to say don't use this lightly, because it will do nothing for you unless, in fact it will actively hamper you unless you have your Ancestral Warchief totems active. If you don't feel confident that you can keep an Ancestral Warchief totem active and attacking enemies all the time, then don't use Bloodlust support on your primary attack. We'll come to the Ancestral totems in a sec, but that is an important factor. Bloodlust is a very strong support gem, but it has a very real drawback, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to socket those skills into the weapon, and we're going to look for a 2-handed weapon. In terms of the sorts of weapons that I've been looking at, in Path of Building, I've tried to create weapons that I feel are quite plausible for you to acquire quite early in the league. So here we have an Exquisite Blade that has 129% increased physical damage, 17 to 31 physical damage, and 18% increased attack speed. This is a pretty solid but pretty basic item. 392 damage per second, and nothing amazing. You can do far better than this. And in fact, if we want to do far better than this, we can just test out Starforge, which with my current setup is doing about 50% more damage. Starforge, of course, being a very powerful, unique item, but one that you can usually get. Terminus Est actually does more damage than the weapon that I've thrown together here as well. And Terminus Est is not nearly as rare as Starforge is early in the league. The rest of the gear that I've got is purely defensive in nature. So I have this helmet that I threw together just as an example of something you might use when you might be quite happy to acquire this in tier 4 maps and then use it up to and including tier 12s, and then you're sort of going, I'm kind of sick of that helmet, I wish I could get something else. Belly of the Beast is pretty similar, these gloves, and so on. This is sort of rubbishy items that I've equipped just for the benefits of putting something together in the interim. Unfortunately, I'm not able to use all of the skill gems that I would like to use in modeling this build because Path of Building is not yet completely updated. So that's unfortunate, but there's nothing I can really do about that at the moment. So, your primary attack is going to be Heavy Strike linked to Impale Support and any 2 to 4 of Brutality, Ruthless, Multistrike, Melee Fizz, and Bloodlust. In your chest, you're going to stick those in your weapon. In your chest, you're going to take Vaal Ancestral Warchief. Now, it's fine to compromise on the Vaal version early on. You can use Ancestral Warchief instead, and then aspire to acquiring a Vaal version later on. but you don't need it now. We're going to link that to Chance to Bleed. We're going to link it to melee physical damage and to Brutality. And then if you've got a 6-link chest, stick in up to 2 more gems as well. In the helmet, we're going to go Frenzy, link to Fortify, link to faster attacks, and power charge on critical strikes. Frenzy is a skill that does a standard in front of you attack, just like Heavy Strike, but that also always gives you a frenzy charge when it hits, and that gets faster and does more damage when you've got more frenzy charges. We're not really doing this for the damage, we're doing it because we want to have frenzy charges in order to amp up our main skill, Heavy Strike. As an alternative, feel free to change this to Frenzy, Fortify, Curse on Hit, and Vulnerability. And another option that you've got with your chest, you could put Curse on Hit Vulnerability in onto what your Ancestral Warchief totems do. In your gloves, we're going to stick Leap Slam attached to faster attacks, Fortify, and Endurance Charge on melee stun. Leap Slam has been changed so that when you hit an enemy that is at full life, you will always stun it. This is absolutely phenomenal with Endurance Charge on melee stun. It means that against trash mobs on a map, you will always have Endurance Charges. And it only really comes up when you go against a boss that you're going to need to find another way to get those. And for those, we're going to, in the boots, we're going to stick Enduring Cry, the Pride Aura, which we'll come back to in a sec, War Banner, and any guard skill of your choice. The guard skills, Molten Shell, Vaal Molten Shell, Steel Skin, and Immortal Call are all defensive skills that you can use when you suspect you're about to take a big hit. And each of them has slightly different mechanics, but each of them will provide you a significant panic button. It's like preemptively using a life flask, and they should be used a lot in combat. Vaal Molten Shell is the one that has the best overall effects, and is the one that you should use when you've got excellent gear all around, but earlier on, feel free to use something else. Now, in terms of how I would play the build, what you want to do is drop your Ancestral Warchief totem and start just going to town with Heavy Strike, striking down the enemies left, right, and center. This is a build that I think will be very solid on bosses, although it has not yet been tested. And I think it will be the sort of build that will be quite safe for newer players to use. While you're leveling the build, you'll just want to settle for weapons that have decent physical damage. Don't worry about other mods like elemental damage. Even if they do provide some benefit, they're not going to be nearly as good as physical damage and attack speed. So focus on weapons that have got good physical damage and good attack speed. And if you have to drop some of the support gems, that's perfectly fine. You can do that. In terms of auras, I mentioned Pride as an aura before. Pride is incredible, and it's one of the main reasons for scaling physical damage. This is an aura that I believe is going to feel a lot like Blasphemy. If you've used Blasphemy in the past, which applies a curse to all nearby enemies, what Pride does is, over a certain radius, nearby enemies take at least 19% more physical damage, but this raises up to 39% the longer they stay in the aura. This amplifies your strength of being exceptionally good at dealing damage to individual enemies. So particularly powerful enemies like bosses. Now, in terms of variants of the build that you can do, this build is optimized somewhat for killing tough bosses early on, and does not have some of the exceptionally powerful ways of exterminating packs of monsters that skills like an elemental hit character can have with its Mirage Archer firing at enemies nearby, or that a Herald of Ice character can do, where it can just decimate entire screens full of monsters based on the power of Herald of Ice. If you want to be better at dealing with entire packs, what you want to do is do not use the... there's one support gem you need to not use, and that is the Brutality support, which is the one that prevents you from dealing damage that is not physical. And what you want to do is add Herald of Ash into your build somewhere. Herald of Ash will reserve a lot of your mana, and when you massively overkill a monster, so the monster has 10,000 hit points and you hit it for 100,000 damage, that extra 90,000 damage doesn't help you. With Herald of Ash, however, that 90,000 damage doesn't go to waste. All nearby enemies are set on fire for a percentage of that 95,000 damage, that 90,000 damage, and they will burn over time. This means that one smash, even if you miss some of the enemies in a pack, can set those enemies on fire. So if you want to specialize a bit in clearing packs, you're going to want to pick up Herald of Ash. And if you don't want to specialize in killing packs, if you just want to be a boss killing, an absolute boss killing god, then I would suggest as your remaining reservation to reserve more mana, you do that with the War Banner skill. In any case, this is the core that I have in mind for the Impale Champion. I'm just going to bring up the passive tree once more. Take a screenshot of that if you want. When it's been tried and tested, I will post a Path of Building link, but in the interim, hopefully this will give you a sense. For leveling, what I would suggest you do is firstly come down here, pick up the powerful nodes at the Duelist starting area. This section here, you'll just take Golem's Blood, and then the rest of it we can pick up later, Titanic Impacts. And then come this way and pick up the Swift Skewering cluster, and then come down here. We'll leave Dismembering for later. That's Critical Strike nodes. If you've watched my video on Critical Strike scaling, you'll know that it's something that works better when you can take a lot of it at once. We'll then come down this way, pick up some powerful life nodes, pick up the Soul of Steel cluster. This is incredibly good now. We'll start also working our way up into the Marauder area, picking up powerful nodes along the way. These sword clusters, hold off on picking these up until very late in the game. The reason for that is that while you're leveling, you might end up just coming across an axe that's better than any sword you've seen, so leave those aside for the moment. At that point, we'll then want to pick up Constitution, because Constitution is a very good node, and then start filling out the things that we've missed. So there's these life and regen nodes up here that will help you out. Alternately, you'll notice there's a fair amount of emphasis placed on life regen as a defense. If you would prefer, instead of life regen, you can drop some of those life regen nodes and pick up Vaal Pact. I've always found Vaal Pact a little bit clunky to use, but that is my personal preference. It is a very powerful node, and it's one that a lot of players experience success with. I just don't find that I'm included in that. You'll notice that I haven't filled out the jewels. There are 3 jewel slots here. In terms of options, you've got the heavy strike threshold jewel, and you have in this spot you have the option of using Intuitive Leap. Intuitive Leap's quite a rare jewel. You won't get it early in the league. What it does is it lets you allocate passive nodes that are as though they're connected to the tree. So what this will let you do is you can pick up Vigor, you can pick up Revelry, you can pick up Cloth and Chain, and you can also, I believe, pick up this new node here if it was any use to you, Dirty Techniques, which isn't so great for you. And you've also got Adamant down here. All of these can be picked up without having to connect them. That can be a powerful option, so do consider that as one choice that you've got available to you, should you want to go down that route. The other thing you could do, and this requires another expensive and rare jewel, there is a jewel, and I can't remember its name at the moment. Inspired Learning, that's the one. Inspired Learning. If you allocate 4 or more notable passives within the radius, within its small radius, then it will give you an incredible buff when you kill a rare monster. This is a powerful jewel, and it's something that you should keep in mind as an option. However, that gem, Inspired Learning, is never cheap early in a league. And if you've got the currency to buy that, you would probably be better off investing in a Starforge first, and then investing in 6-linking your Starforge before then. There are probably also additional optimizations that are possible. No one's really familiar with the new passive tree at the moment. There's lots of powerful new nodes on it, and I'm certain that I am missing some of them. Anyways, if you've got any questions, fire away below. Otherwise, I do think that this is something that is functional as a league starter, and I will see you in game.